Hi students, welcome to lesson number 10, Lenski's theory of stratification. Let us start with the introduction. Gerhard Lenski developed a theory which in essence is more of a synthesis of theory conflicts with the functional analysis. Although this theory specifically related to social stratification, but it is an attempt to uncover the history of mankind for 10 centuries into a sociological model. The combination of conflict and functionalist assumptions, according to Lenski, created an evolutionary framework. According to Lenski, only evolutionary theory can analyze the structure and process as is limited by a series of travelling without both in a short time. Now let us look into the objectives. 1. To learn the importance of functional and conflict aspect of society. 2. To study Lenski's synthesis of conflict and functional in understanding society. Lenski's theory. Lenski's stratification theory is therefore tried to unite the efforts of the functionalist and conflict theorist to explain the existence and operating classes. Social functionalist and conflict rested on two traditions which are based on differences in assumptions about human nature and the nature of society. Functionalism relies on conservative tradition which saw stratification as an important to meet the needs of society as a whole. On the other hand, conflict theory questioned the existence of social needs. He is more concerned with a variety of needs, desires and interests of individuals and subgroups in their struggle to obtain goods and services that are valuable and rare. Such differences reflect the contradictory assumptions about human nature. Lenski states that the functionalists emphasize the social nature of human beings, that human beings cannot survive without both to live in the groups. However, at the same time, they suspect the reality of basic human and stressed the need for control over social agencies. Lenski's theory of stratification. The structural dynamics of the distribution system by using the assumption of human nature from a more structural functional tradition of conservative and radical approach to conflict, which Lenski brings together the law to develop goods and services. Both these postulates derive from assumptions which Lenski summarized as follows. Humans are social creatures who need to live with the community. Humans put them or the group's main interest above the interest of other groups. Humans have an unlimited appetite for goods and services available in the community. Individuals inherited differences in the ability of business to obtain goods and services that are rare. The structure quoting systems. According to Lenski, who restrict the class as grouping people in society who are in the same position in terms of strength or some specific form of power, prestige and privilege. But Lenski focuses on the class that determine the distribution of power and prestige privilege in society with a surplus of goods. So, class is power in industrial societies which are complex. A person can become a member of a number of classes. Class must be viewed from a multidimensional phenomena. Lenski restricts the class system as hierarchic classes which are arranged in the levels of some single criteria based on the postulates that determine the dynamic structure, and distribution systems conclude that some propositions can be tested. These propositions are: 1. The strata differences in the distribution system will vary directly with the size of the surplus of a society. Second one is that the fast vertical mobility will tend to vary directly with the speed of social change and technology. The third point says that hostility step is inversely related to the grade level and above mobility. The thesis of stratification, where hunting and gathering society is a society where the techniques of food production is still primitive and not efficient. The key to explain quoting system in such community is the absence of substantial economic surplus, in the sense the distribution of goods almost evenly. Horticulture society that has developed is very similar to hunting and gathering society in terms of scarcity of surplus, which make development of social class more clear. As a result of increasing plantation techniques, advanced horticulture society began to have surplus and then led to a separate system. There we can see the origin of the class system based on primarily on the basis of birth rather than donations which can be given to someone in the group. The agrarian society is another important step which may manifest through the discovery and utilization of animal power. Lenski also showed that the production of technological progress offset by the progress of military technology, so that the techniques of fighting increasingly more industrial efficient. Society describes the next phase of evolutionary development of quoting systems. In some way, this is very different society from an agrarian society. The emergence of industrial societies are ripe, which mark the turning point of the first of an ancient evolutionary trend towards increasing differences. Lenski argues that his theory can be said is not a conservative or a radical theory, but is the integration of these two opposing theoretical perspectives that explores the theological developments over basic evolutionary framework. The critics of evolutionary synthesis of Lenski. Lenski is very enthusiastic with the view of humans as the selfish creature alone, assuming the core theory developed along with is exactly the picture of humanity with the human model, and that is the functionalism. However, Lenski writes that adherence to rules can be explained solely as a form of awareness of the personal interest. From the concept, Lenski concludes that humans rarely have the freedom and is usually determined by the innate essence of selfishness, but somewhat restrained by the norms of social structure. Lenski's social theory is more inclined towards the perspective of conflict. He was reluctant to accept an established system of abstract without turbulence. Lenski quoting study approach is to addressing the historical use patterns that can be found among the historical facts of the particular. He asserted that the evolutionary model is correct and that must be analyzed in the community itself. Evolutionary model makes the social scientist can explore various developments and changes in social structure. It is also possible to identify various determinants of the structure which is the object of study, identifying what it sees as the main determinant of social structure in human history. One is the human genetics, second one is the technology which gradually formed to enhance this legacy, and the third one is environment for human activities and technological developments, particularly the environment that impede the flow of information from other communities. And the other one is the challenge which has hard among the public in an effort to maintain the territorial base sources. In contrast to the functionalist, the conflict theories do not approach the problem of social stratification by identifying an abstract notion of society with its own need. They view society as being formed by various individuals and groups and their needs and interests. It is these needs and interests that become the starting point for the conflict theorist, while the functionalists have no place for the concept of power in their analysis of society and social inequality. The conflict theorists begin with the question of power. Society for them is a stage where struggles take place among different groups and individuals over the available scarce resources and the socially valued positions. Those who are powerful use their strength to occupy the valued positions and resources. It is the domination of some groups over the others that perpetuate social inequality in society. For example, those who are rich are able to send their wards to good schools, and it is because of this that they are able to compete for the positions that are valued well. Since the poor cannot even afford to send their children to ordinary schools, they can never compete with the rich and the powerful. Comparing the two schools of thought, Lenski writes that where the functionalists emphasize the common interest shared by members of a society, conflict theories emphasize the interest which divide. Where the functionalists stress the common advantages which accrue from social relationships, conflict theorists emphasize the element of domination and exploitation. The functionalists emphasize consensus as the basis of social unity, wherein the conflict theorists emphasize coercion. The functionalists see human societies as social systems, but the conflict theorists see them as stages on which struggles for power and privilege takes place. The two schools of thought are generally seen as being totally opposed to each other. However, some scholars have also argued that there are many things common in the two perspectives. They argue that conflict and consensus are two sides of the same coin. Scholars like 𝗳𝗏, Lenski, 𝗵𝗵 and Lunham are among those who have arrived to go beyond the polarities and have attempted synthesis of the two perspectives. Now towards a synthesis where theories of stratification which explains towards a synthesis with Lenski. The German philosopher and Hegel, who through their theory of dialectics popularized the term synthesis. According to him, ideas or human things progresses through a process of opposition or negation. A particular idea or a thesis leads to the development of an opposite idea or an antithesis. Through a process of dialectics, there emerges a synthesis. Another idea that integrates the valid points of both the thesis as well as the antithesis. In this approach, they question at a different level, as pointed out by Lenski. Whereas both thesis and antithesis are essentially normative theories of inequality, that is, essentially concerned with moral evaluation and the question of justice, the synthesis is essentially analytical, which is concerned with the empirical relationship and their causes, or in other words, while thesis and antithesis are arguments made from ideological standpoints. Synthesis relies on mobilization of empirical data. It is a result of modern application of the scientific method to the study of age-old problem of human inequalities. The earliest attempts go beyond the conservative and radical positions on the question of social inequality, which could be seen in the writings of the German sociologist Max Weber. Though he did not consciously attempt a synthesis of the two traditions, his writings, The Theory of Social Stratification, Lenski clarifies that this is an attempt at developing a synthesized theory of social stratification, focusing on three important questions. The first one is, the focus is on the causes of stratification rather than its consequences. The second question is, which is focusing on, as suggested in the book, his main focus is on power and privilege rather than prestige. The third question, finally, he equates social stratification with the distributive process in human society, the process by which scarce goods and values are distributed. The structure of the distribution system is made up of three types of units. One, the individuals, the classes, and the third one is the class systems. Each of these is linked to the other and represents a different level of organization within a distributive system. Individuals, for Lenski, work at the basic level of the system, but they constitute units within the classes. The classes in turn are the units within class systems. Historically speaking, the question of distribution and social inequality, this is significant only when the societies begin to produce surplus, that is, more than what is required for the survival of the given population. The core question for Lenski is, who gets what and why? His answer is simple and clear. The distribution of rewards in a society is a function of the distribution of power. This answer is counterposed to the answer suggested by the structural functionalist, who explain the differential distribution of rewards in terms of functional needs of the social system. Though this answer to the question of who gets what and why appears to be rather simple, his overall theory of stratification is quite an elaborate one. Lenski has offered a multidimensional view of the working of the distribution system that determines the structure of power and privilege in society. He defines class primarily in economic terms and could treat it as being a part of the economic system of the society. Lenski uses the term in a very broad sense and emphasizes more on the political dimension. For Lenski, stratification is a multidimensional phenomena, and therefore this rejection is single dimensional definition of class. Human societies are stratified in various ways, and each of these alternate modes of stratification provides a basis for different conception of class. Thus, classes are not merely aggregation of individuals who share common economic status in society or a common position in the structure of production. There could be different types, but he defines class as an aggregation of persons in society who stands in a similar position towards the synthesis. Lenski, with respect to some form of power, privilege or prestige, clarifies that if one has to explain the phenomena of social stratification or answer the question who gets what and why, power and class must be our chief concern. Prestige and privilege are largely determined by the distribution of power. By power, Lenski means all those individuals who have access to the institutional sources of power or who have the legitimate right or capability of using the force. Thus, in his definition of class, the most crucial element is that of power. However, the manner in which he defines power and class, a single individual can be member of more than one class. For example, in contemporary Indian society, an individual can be a member of the middle class with respect to the property holdings, a member of the working class by virtue of his job in a factory, and a member of subordinate class in terms of his being a Dalit by caste. Each of the major roles he occupies as well as his status in the property hierarchy influences his choice of obtaining the things he seeks in life, and thus each places him in a specific class. This tendency towards multidimensionality of class statuses, according to Lenski, becomes more pronounced as one moves from the technologically primitive societies to technologically advanced societies. He further argues that every unequal or stratified system has a potential of conflict. The members of every class share common interest with one another, and these shared interests constitute a potential basis of hostility toward other classes. The members of a given class have a vested interest in protecting and increasing the values of their common resources and in reducing the value of the resources of the opposite classes. However, he does not claim that classes always act together or that they are aware of their common interest, nor are they always hostile to the opposite classes. A given class structure spells out the possibility that which could be realized, but there is nothing inevitable about them. The final element in the theory of social stratification is the concept of class systems. A class system, according to Lenski, is defined as hierarchy of classes ranked in terms of some single criteria. However, there is no single class system. He argues that once we recognize the fact that power has diverse bases and that these are not always reducible to some single common denominator, we are forced to think in terms of series of class hierarchies and class systems. Now, let us sum up. To sum up the lesson, Lenski's stratification theory is trying to unite the efforts of the functionalist and conflict theory to explain the existence and operating classes. Social functionalist and conflict rested on two traditions which are based on differences in assumptions about human nature and the nature of society. The theory of social stratification, where Lenski clarifies that This is an attempt at developing a synthesized theory of social stratification, focusing on three important questions. That is, to focus is on the causes of stratification rather than its consequences. The focus is suggested in the title of his focus. His main focus is on power and privilege rather than prestige. And finally, he equates social stratification with the distributive process in human societies, the process by which the scarce goods and values are distributed. Thank you.